You know, when we're born into this world, it seems that we're born into a world where there's this feeling of deficiency. And then we go about our lives, how do I make up for this innate deficiency that we feel, you know? Like feeling not enough, what do I have to do to feel more confident, happier? So, let me start with this. What do you guys think that means? Well, in this case here, it is the human being. Okay? The human being, alone. And so, the human being alone, in other words, not supported inwardly, what do? There's two big choices here, okay, for the typical human being, okay, who's not on a quest. Number one, over here, we have the external drive, okay, or external stimuli, or the external fill. This can happen in so many ways. The things that fill us. Because from this perspective here, there is nothing inside. It's the unconscious belief, we've got nothing. And for most of our population, it's like that, right? There's nothing inside to sustain me. Therefore, if there's nothing, then I'm going all out. All out. For the external fill. And this can happen in a number of ways, right? So, can you guys give me an example of what's a big fill on the exterior? Yeah.
Expectations.
Expectations. Yes, that's right. Outer expectations.
Yeah. Other people.
Sex? Sure. Yeah.
Relationships.
Buffets.
Buffet.
Boy, you get ones.
All you can eat buffets.
Relationships, I think.
Relationships, yep. Relationships are huge. An external reinforcer. I would say that the two principal ones are, and they start with the letter P, are partners and profession. These are the big fillers. Because if you lose one of those, for many people, you lose your job, you've lost your identity. Because we're so wrapped up. This is all I got. You know, that unconscious premise that there's nothing inside to sustain me, so naturally you move out. And I don't blame people. It's not part of our culture. We were never educated with the premise that there's an internal source of sustenance. Call it what you want, Mayor Baba, Jesus, presence, life force, doesn't matter, right? What does matter is that it's a source beyond the mind. So I don't blame. In our school system, are you kidding? Is that on the curriculum? That there's an internal source of sustenance? We're 200 years away from that. Maybe less, I don't know. We don't even teach basic psychology, let alone, you know.
I had a mother that was very disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Where does that fit in? You know, like constraints and
right.
Don't do that. And you know.
So here's our environmental impingements, right? That impinge upon the soul, and there are many, right? From early trauma. I mean, we have trauma that starts in utero, even before the strict upbringing. The baby is inside the womb, and the mother is going through a trauma. Mom's trauma is the child's trauma.
But I'm not saying necessarily negative.
Yep.
It's in a way, you know,
the discipline you were talking about.
My mother was disciplined. I mean, boy.
Right.
I was, you know, I wasn't going to make it unless she pushed discipline on me. There was no way that I'm going to make it in this world. That was the sense I got. You've got to toe the line.
Toe the line. Now, you see there's no room for being human. For being imperfect. Yeah? No. Yeah, right, exactly. And so setting an expectation on you for how to be when I'm nowhere near that. I'm a failing human being. We all are. But there's no room in a household that says, here's how you have to be perfect. I am not. So there's no room for being real, for being a flawed human being. And this is one of the greatest things. We talk about obstacles, you know. One of the greatest obstacles is that we can't be perfect. Give me a smile, huh? There's always this I've got directors in schools telling kids up and down the aisles, right? Give me a smile. Excuse me? I'll ask the student afterwards, how did you feel about that when the director, who should know better, when she said that to you, how did it feel? I wanted to tell her to F off. Because she wasn't respecting that I'm feeling low today. Is this okay? Is low okay? And it isn't. And we're teaching that from the top down. So we learn, we're very crafty, right? When you walk in that door, put your real self in your back pocket, and there's your director. And by the way, it's the same for us as staff too. You put on that happy face because there's no room for anything less. And what that does then is that it divides us inside. The okay part, the not okay part. Like, it's not okay. Life is this, isn't it, huh? Up and down. No, 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 you must be up. And that's not how it works. Someone at the center said the other day, listen, we're allowed to have down times. Look at the Creator. He even created the desert. So are we allowed our desert days? Our desert days where we feel absolutely impoverished, empty, depleted, lost. And oftentimes that loss happens because we've lost one of these external fillers, these external props. And like we were saying before, profession and partnership are two big ones where we really lean heavily on. Okay, so this is the external support happens here with a self that's not connected to anything else. Huh? So in this place here, so we've got external support here. What do you think the other place we go to? In the separated self. So we talk about external. What would be another place, you guys? Do you think?
Silence.
Pardon?
Silence.
Silence? Actually, it's just the opposite. As far as this theme that I'm bringing up, you know?
Would it be addictions, maybe, as a way to circumvent?
Distractions, entertainment.
Distraction.
Distractions, right? Well, here we talked about external. What happens at the end of the day when all the external drops away? The TV is off, the book is read, blah, 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 done, 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 and it's just you and you.
Thoughts.
What happens then?
Thoughts.
Huh? Everything is off, but
Thoughts.
thoughts. Beautiful. So we go from external to neural. Huh? Seamlessly. One goes off, one goes on. We never touch emptiness, aloneness, whatever, right? Because we would be more mortified then. We always have to have something going, either externally or neurally. And that becomes the pattern of life. We're bouncing between these two poles, huh? Of the E and the N. Sorry, normally I work with a flip chart, and I can, when it gets weird like this, I can just flip it. So you have self here, external, neural. We live this way. You know, external, when I get that job, when I do this project, oh, this album I'm finishing, this art project, something, that'll do it for me. And then what happens? We do it, and you know what? 3 weeks later, right? I fulfilled everything I wanted to do, you know. If we pin all our hopes, you know, this'll do it for me. Marriage, the perfect partner, give it a couple of years. Disappointment. And it's all about expectations, huh? I put expectations on an area that I, you know, shouldn't be putting expectations on. You know, like it's an unrealistic assumption that these things are going to do it for me. But you know what? Disappointment brings us to the divine. Because repeated disappointment in the outer world, the things that were supposed to do it for you, your big ticket item, right? When you go, yeah, it was okay, but does it sustain us moment to moment? Right? The high is gone after a few weeks. Now what? Well, what about the rest of my life? That moment-to-moment sustenance. It's not the project, huh? It's not my job. They'll give us something, but they won't give us the meaning of life. So what happens when we live this way? What do you think breaks up this pattern? If this is all I'm doing with my life, what could break the pattern, you guys, of living this way? That could shatter this.
Illness.
Disillusionment.
Illness?
Yeah, my brother, his daughter died.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Okay. So here was an experience, and was he shattered?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So pain has a way of changing everything, huh? It can stop this dynamic and go, wait a second. So pain can actually be a way of entering into the internal life. It's a portal in. Pain, hardship, loss, absence. If we learn how to deal with it correctly, we're just jumping a little ahead right now because we're going to be talking about emotional resilience later on. You know, how do we deal with pain? Again, do schools teach us how to deal with emotional pain? No, it's not on the curriculum. And yet, our day-to-day lives are filled with that. How do I deal with it? And usually, emotional pain brings out the self at its worst, unfortunately. Unless we learn how to deal with pain, there's a great quote. The healthy way of dealing with suffering is one of the most important keys in life. We deal with pain in an unhealthy way, it actually separates us from the divine. So it could be a portal in. A loss can make you stronger or it can make you disintegrate. Depending on how you handle it.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of Mayababa people under the impression that Baba blanketly says that suffering has a spiritual benefit to it. But there are some of Baba's writings where it clearly indicates. There's one, that book that was put together by, who was it? Ruth White, I think. And it's, Baba says, only suffering in which the meaning of suffering is fathomed by the person who's undergoing it has any spiritual benefit. The rest is worthless. But people seem to have ignored that.
Right, right. So it can be a portal to changing one's life, you know? That life finally corners us. It corners us.
If you keep suffering, it'll break you down and you'll get there, I think.
That, or you can, you know, if you can choose to deal with pain not wisely, not adaptively, but maladaptively, right? And we're going to get into that, all the ways we can respond to hardship, you know? And usually what we do is we choose the worst is the easiest way to go, you know? It really takes courage to keep your heart open during intense pain. It's very easy to shut down. That's the path of least resistance. I'm shutting down. We learned that as children, and it's hardwired into adulthood. And so we were talking about loss conduit, but even without outer loss, you guys, what happens is that ultimately we get to see how dissatisfying this kind of life is. Dissatisfaction becomes the traction for change. I have exclusively relying on my outer intellect to get me through. In this place here, there's mental power and willpower. This is what's keeping me going. That's my motor. Okay? And it's an exclusive identification with the outer intellect. This will get me to the finish line because it's all I have. And ultimately, if we're honest with ourselves, we're going to see how unfulfilling this is. So that kind of suffering of living, you know, mind alone living is insufficient living. And that's what this is. This represents mind alone, my personality, my thoughts, my beliefs, opinions, all that, right? This is what sustains me. Ultimately, we will find that it's so unsustaining because there's something so much greater than the limited mind that we can't even conceive of that. So what happens? Unsatisfaction then becomes the catalyst for change. Oh, this didn't work. All my dreams, this neurally, you know, just, and usually the neural, you see over here, the external, is about the now, what I can feel in the moment. The neural has a lot to do with the future. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? What will they say? What will I say in response? And most important, what will I wear? We're never here. We're always there. So when we do the neural, it's mostly about the future. You know, so there's a filling here and there's a future here, you know? And ultimately, if we're not replenished by the source, we become a very, very weary traveler. This can't get us there. So then that opens up the third phase. So if we have external here, neural here, what's down here?
Internal.
Boom! Let's move. Yeah, internal. So I like playing with words, you know, so that we can remember things, you know, external, neural, internal. Ah, finally, we're at here. Now, I know among us here, you know, we're already on that path, the path of internal. All of us believe in an internal source of sustenance, whatever name we want to give it, right? So we find value in that because we have found no value here. And what are we doing here? It's almost like opening up to the best self, the higher self. Okay? Now, we good so far? Can I have an amen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
Thank you. Thank you. So you guys, we're going to do another drawing here, okay? Bing, bang, bing, bing, bang, bing. Anybody tell me what this might represent?
The blockages from the inner self, things that block us from it.
Obstacles.
Obstacles.
Where? Obstacles?
Those three things.
These
across-
things, huh?
The three worlds?
Did you read my book? I don't have a book, but you're right. So, the separated self, our divine nucleus, and all the things that stand in the way between self and source. And our job is to cultivate conditions compatible with source. Okay. I come from it from here, from a psychological angle, okay? What's the psychology that we need to work on? Because I will tell you guys this. For me, spirituality means having a permeable physical body. In other words, if this is closed up, these are some of the obstacles, you see, then spirit can't reach us. The emanations of spirit, you know, because what is this place down here? It's an implosion, isn't it? It's energy, it's vitality, it's insight. It's where we get our wherewithal from, our stamina. When we're completely open and these obstacles aren't there, boom, we're filled. Because there's nothing standing in the way. But there sure is a lot in the way. And that's the journey, isn't it? And you guys, okay, I'm going to take myself on, you know? So now here's the question. What do you guys think are some of the obstacles stopping the innermost from reaching the outermost?
Worry, things
Worry.
about this, money worries, life worries, stress.
Yeah, right there. Financial worries. You know how huge that is? Where it becomes the whole person, huh? I could have the intellectual belief in God, and yet I am racked by worry that's taking all my psyche space, right? There's no room when I'm all consumed. Bam, ba, ba, bam, ba, bam, bam. Financial worry is and we can say worry in general, stress, thoughts, because every time I'm thinking, I'm entertaining a thought, I am not experiencing presence, God. Either I'm entertaining a thought, right, or I'm willing to relinquish the thought I'm having, because I think we are in love with the sound of our own thoughts. We love them. Because we can't get them to shut up. You know? But we want to also approach that part of ourselves with love and compassion. It's not about the forcing And, you know, like the discipline, you must have silence, you know, and, you know, no, always with compassion. That'll help us more than anything. So, we talked about worry. Thinking about things is an immense block. So we're going to call this one here thought, okay? And we could be locked in thought about the future as well, right? I go for my run on the center, you know, and I'm running 7 in the morning, feeling God's presence, and all of a sudden, I'm about what I'm going to do and going to say. And then I'll come back, and 2 minutes later, I'm gone again. I said, you can never stay here. You keep going there, so why should we even have it here if we're using our mind most of the time to go there? So it's always that gentle, can we come back to here? Here's where the action is. Here's where the heart is, the gold. Here's where everything is. Here's where life is. Right? So that is one heck of an obstacle to deal with, and it's lifelong. But if we value presence, God's love, say, what's more important, my thoughts right now or the presence of God? Okay, got it. My thought, and to know the consequences of giving into my thoughts is actually separating me from the divine right now. I'm making a choice right now. And so we just gently and compassionately bring ourselves back to being empty. That emptiness is a portal to the divine. If we want to become a receptacle to that power, what does receptacle mean? It means becoming a receptive. And what does receptive mean? It means becoming not active neurally. So if we are to be the receptacle for divine love, receptacle, receptive, not over-agitated. And so we're in that place of receptivity and becoming the receptacle. Because that's what this is all about, isn't it? You know, becoming the opening, the inner opening. We talk about loving God. Now, with the work I do, it's about being the opening for this love so that we work on dissolving these obstructions, which is lifelong and lifelongs, right? And then we receive this sustenance. So there's an act of receiving, and then the second step after that is then a giving. Giving of our talents and assets to the greater world. There's a great saying, if you don't do it that way, how can the poor enrich? How can the poor in spirit enrich your life around you? You know, if you're miserable, feeling empty, you're not going to not want to give. But if we've received and have this feeling of contentment where nothing is missing, that feeling of nothing is missing, I don't have to go anywhere because it's happening right now in this moment. We can call that a moment of grace. Wow, I'm not restless. There's no restlessness, there's no neediness, there's nothing to need. It's all here. And why is it all here? Because we're all here. And that timelessness takes over. We've all been there, huh? That vast expanse. Wow. And we're infilled by the influx. And then giving is a very natural occurrence from that place, right? Because there's such an outpouring, you know? You want to give, you want to enrich your environment. It's almost like here's where we want to be. What's really important, right, is to accept exactly where we are right now, right? That'll open things up. As opposed to pressuring ourselves to be more than what we really are. We don't need that kind of pressure. We're flawed human beings. We're working the path. And we want to really accept ourselves when we're having an off day. We're not 100%. They're not all mountaintop moments. True? Bliss, top of the world, nothing can go wrong. Next morning you wake up. What happened? I thought, you know, it was going to stay there as a permanent station. Right? Oh shit. Yeah?
Embrace and accept the pain.
Embrace, accept the pain, accept the less than state. You know, yesterday I was 100% and thought I'd stay there forever. This morning, I'm 20%. And what's my job? Acceptance. Why? Because it exists. This is simple work, okay, folks? Depth psychology is about being with the truth. And what's the truth? I'm a 20% dude today. You know, I'm closed down. I don't have a deep relationship with God right now, you know? I feel like crap. I don't feel like giving. I feel like taking. I feel like reading a World War II novel. Not only is it about acceptance, but an acceptance without admonishing the self for being less than. You shouldn't be this way, you know, less than 100%. How dare you? You know, like, we need to give ourselves permission to be the truth of who we are. Flawed, and that we're not consistent. And, you know, something happens when we accept the truth. The nature of now changes when we say yes to it. The nature of now changes when we say yes to it. Complete acceptance, non-conditional acceptance. You know what? I feel like crap today. Dun, 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 you know? And something lifts because you're not straining away. You're not saying, this is bad. Baba wants me to be more. This is wrong. I should be in this elevated place, you know, but I'm not. So there's that pressure to be more. It takes us away from the now. And only in the now can we transform the now. And we bring ourselves back and say, this is what I am. In fact, what's really gutsy of us is to tell another human being that. Okay? We do all this work on our own. But imagine Max and I go to Max and say, Max, what's the truth? Be honest with you. I'm not 100%. I'm 20% today. I have some sadness in me. And yesterday I felt great, but this is the truth of me now. There's something very powerful when we tell another person the truth of what we're going through. Truth is love. And in return, what Max says, and this is the greatest gift we can give each other, Max will say something like you're nodding right now, I get it. Thanks for telling me. And when we feel understood in our broken place, our less than place, something happens. Max is not pushing it back on me. Oh, come on. Not feeling good. Come on, you're staying at the center. Or you've got your health. It's sunny. What do you think your problem is? You know, diminishment. Max is pushing it back to me, right? And I don't feel understood. So we tell, and this, by the way, in therapy is what we call the curative agent. It's quite simple. Before we come up with all our great interventions, the curative agent is this. One person tells another person the truth. Here's what's really going on for me. I'm daring to tell you about, you know, my innermost right now. And that person feels understood by the other. There's the curative agent. They get me. They're not pressuring me. They're not saying this is bad, you know? And what happens if, let's say it's that depressiveness, it starts to lift. So there's something very powerful, you guys, and very spiritual about revealing the true self to another human being. There's a great quote, it goes like this, the greatest gift we can give each other, it's the real self. Not too high, not too low. And what courage that is. And humility, which is another divine attribute, isn't it? The humility to be real. Because if you're real, honest, authentic, with a person, with someone, you're almost giving them permission to be the same way. Wow, look how honest he's being. I can be that way too. So it spreads that way. So the greatest gift we can give each other is the real self. So I'll say that to Max. I'm feeling like crap today. I don't know why. I can't even find an outer trigger. It's just something inside me. And Max goes, you know, thanks for telling me. What we do as the receiver, you guys, when somebody says that to us, this is what we do, what's the word, not literally, but we go like this, we just take it. Thanks for telling me you're in a slump today. And that's the greatest gift you can give them, the gift of understanding. And what happens to us? We change. Our mood lifts. When I work with children, I work with kids from 12 to 20s and 30s, actually, you know, young adults as well. I'll ask kids, what's your number one complaint about your parents? They don't understand. They don't understand. So I learn to shut up. They won't accept my less than great day. You know, what's wrong? No, let's not ask what's wrong. How about what's going on? I think wrong implies, a judgment. That this broken self isn't okay. My 20% self isn't okay. Of course it's okay, but not in our world. I had somebody come in, this 23-year-old boy, never kissed a girl in his life, and he's enraged at life. And a teacher brought him to me. See, the teacher was the reference point. So that teacher, you know, had their eyes open. We need to look for this guy, you know, because he could do something really bad. So teacher reference got the ball rolling, brings him to me. And all I did is give him the space to rage. What do we do with our anger? We can be constructive with anger or destructive. And by the way, that's another piece down here. We talked about obstacles. Let's call this one here anger. This boy simply needed a place where the anger could come out, where nobody gets hurt. Where he's in a place, I'll take responsibility for this. I want to air it out so I don't act it out in real life. And every week he'd come in, never sit down, he'd be pacing. Oh, I see a couple holding hands, I want to rip off their faces. But what was the truth? Hey, Max, he just wants love. He just wants love. But he'll stay at the anger place so that he doesn't have to go to that deeper place of feeling the pain, right? Anger is a shield to feeling a missing. And I taught him that. But not before he let that out, ripping faces off. Oh, when I see that, you know, oh, the girls in the summertime with what they're wearing, and oh boy. Because he has the belief he can't have. And why? Because he was born with some difficulties, learning issues, okay? He's mildly autistic, has comprehension and motor skill problems, comprehending, you know? So when he speaks to somebody, it's a little wonky, and girls have learned to just shut him out. And it's been so painful for him. But I've been there for him. And he's transformed. He doesn't have a girlfriend. It's not one of these cute little endings, you know? But he's no longer trigger happy. You know? I said, your way to getting whole is feel the truth that right now you don't have a girl. Feel the truth of that. There's an absence in your life. You would love it. This is a legitimate need for connection, for intimacy. It's legitimate. It's healthy. And you don't have what you want. What is the result of that?
I was going to say this. The vulnerability of the student was not a threat to you.
Right.
And so he could accept.
Yes. So he went from the anger to feeling the pain. There's absence in my life right now, and I don't have to get angry. I can just accept this. It hurts. It hurts like heck, but I don't have to get angry. I'm going to go to a more authentic place. We call anger a secondary reaction. The most primary reaction is the hurt of not having what you want. And he was able to go to that. And then the second piece, so number one, feel the truth. Number two was have faith that better will come. Have faith that your heart's desire is going to come true. So she's not there in your life right now. But can you have faith that your heart's desire, the desire for a loving relationship, will happen? I said, you do that every time, okay? And it wore away his anger. It's not endless. It's not bottomless. There is a way out, always. But there is pain. And because I've gone through pain in my life, I'm comfortable with somebody else's. I won't have them talk and stay in their heads, you know. No. Let's go where we have to go, and we'll get through this together. Pain is never a permanent condition. when it's met with the open heart. Pain is never a permanent condition. Pain is simply what we meet on the way to grace. True? Pain is what we meet on the way to essence, God's love. Oh, okay. Pain is a passage. It's not a permanent condition. But our response to it can make it permanent when we're not willing to go through it. Okay? So this is another piece, you guys. I know this is not as expert as it should be, but unassimilated experience is a huge barrier to being fulfilled. Unassimilated experience. We talked about anger. We talked about worry. Other things, right? So let's call this one. Unassimilated experience means, you know, this is the contracted self. This is the self that says no to pain, no to sadness, no to loss. Amen? And so when we have that no, there's a contraction that comes in. And if we're in a state of contraction, healing can never occur. So if we talk about divine energy, healing energy, if the body is in a state of tightness, constriction, if it's got an inner no, nothing is going to happen. The pain stays intact because we don't have the courage to feel the pain openly and have faith and trust that, you know, there will be an end to it when we meet it openly. No one teaches us how to deal with pain, right? So yeah, but it is, in my work, it's an essential stepping stone. If we want a real experience of God, not a head experience, but a full body experience, right? Because my work is not metaphysical, it's highly physical. This is where we feel God, right? It's in the body. But if the body is all tight and says, no, I must not experience this. I must not go through sadness and pain. The absence of love is too great. The absence is so great, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to cut off from God. I'm going to cut off from the moment. I'm going to close down. It's too much. I'm tired of doing pain right. Screw that. You know, so doing pain right is I'm adaptive. I'm doing the right thing. But then every once in a while, okay, that's it, enough. So the body goes back to that place where we say there's a no to now. And when there's a no to now, there's a no to the evermore. True? Because here it is, the beautiful loving presence emanating here. But if we're saying no to this stuff that's here, and we want the goodies, right? I want the feel-good of God's bliss, right? But I have a no to my immediacy. It's not going to reach us. Does that make sense? We need to be a permeable human being. I'm permeable. I'm open to all of life. I'm open to pleasure, and I'm open to pain. That's the stance we want to be in. I'm open to all of life. Look at Jesus Christ, the iconic Sacred Heart. It's a beautiful red Sacred Heart. It radiates out, and yet it's got thorns piercing it all around. Loss, pain, absence. This hurts. Does it turn to stone? Does it go black and harden and constrict and shrink back? No. It's pulsatingly open, even in the face of thorns. 2,000 years later, that iconic picture is still as relevant today. So I'm open to all of life. What courage. But oftentimes what happens with unassimilated experience, that you can feel lifetimes, I really believe, in our current life, going through loss of relationship, okay? It's one of the greatest pains, or what your brother is going through, Loss of relationship can bring you to your knees. When a door closes out there and you're banging on the door, let me back into the garden of love, and the harder you bang, the tighter the door closes, and God is saying, we're going into the desert night for a while. It's not about that door. It's not about the outer love that you crave. Look at what we have here, a community of like-minded people to help each other out. I know people who are very spiritual, who live alone, and they're floundering. So we do need the outside, huh? We have each other for support, to turn to. We don't, we're not isolated human beings. If I am surrounded by like-minded people, I'm going to grow, as opposed to doing this all on your own. That's a very tough thing to do. And many modalities encourage that. Be with like-minded seekers. It'll give you a sense of encouragement to carry on, as opposed to being isolated. So I don't want you to get me wrong before about that external world is not important. It's huge. You can take a walk in the woods and it can bring you closer to God, right? A place where time stands still and where you stand still, finally, because you're in awe and you're taking in the out. You're taking in the out and it's stopping you dead in your tracks. Well, there's something external, but what it's doing is opening me up on the inside, huh? I'm beholding beauty and then beholding beauty here. I can take in the out and I'm also taking in the in. So our outer world, we live out in the world, but what are we going to do? Will what we do promote separation or union? And that's all the difference, right? Two people can do the same thing, but what's your intention behind it and your goal behind it? Cool. So, unassimilated experience. And boy, do we have a lot of agreement in our culture for that, right? No feeling. I heard somebody just yesterday said, stop crying. Now, the person's coming from a very good place, doesn't want the person in pain. It's beautiful. However, there's the non-acceptance, huh? Stop crying. This isn't okay. The heart was in the right place, but because we don't understand the nature of pain, pain will diminish when we say yes to it. So let it just go. If someone's having a tantrum, we don't say, calm down, then I'll speak to you. No, freak out for a bit. That person will return back to baseline. They'll come back if we let them just, I'll go out for walks with boys. They're kinetic, I want to kill. 10 minutes later, they're back. They needed to stand up. They needed to move. And you accept where they are, and okay, they're back. They'll come back to baseline, back from their reactivity of wanting to kill somebody. So unassimilated experience. This is where we say no. There's nothing wrong with sadness, huh? In our culture, there's a premium on happiness. Nothing wrong with sadness. What's wrong is saying no to sadness, saying no to the truth. I get sad. Is that okay with you? Please? Thank you. I'm not always on top of the game or top of the mountain. If we give each other permission to be our less than selves, we can flourish. And like I said before, when we can tell that to another human being, to reveal, I'm telling you, I go to the center and oftentimes, if you guys ask me questions about metaphysics, okay, you will stump me, okay? That's not my area. Like I say, I work in a very, physical way. But I hear people like talking about the planes of consciousness and so on, and what happens between second and third plane. I start to zone out. They're talking about planes. I'm not even on the frickin' tarmac. No. I'm not.
You're veiled.
Now, this is not to put people down. Listen, there's a time and a place for all of that, right? But if we stay stuck in that kind of like metaphysical zone, then it can work against us. So there is a time and a place for all that speculation. I get that. So it's just like a tease. But if we stay there, then that's a way of not coming home to ourselves. Anything else, you guys? What do you think? Another big obstacle inside us, keeping us from feeling the divine in our life. So you guys who came in late.
Sorry about that.
You see that? I was scolding them. Sorry about that. See, perfect answer. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Let's move on. So here we're dealing with the self, the seeker.
Yeah.
And here down below is the nucleus. God, divinity, our wherewithal, stamina, intelligence, love, Baba, the source. And here is everything that stands between self and source. And we're naming them today. Because when you name them, right, these are all things in the psyche. And if we can name them, put them on the board, if we have understanding, then that promotes movement. Yep.
Would shame go there?
Shame. This is great. Huge. What does shame say? What is shame?
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, that's you're no good or something.
Who said that? I'm not good enough. You see how powerful that is, you guys? I'm not good. This isn't good enough, so I'm ashamed.
Yeah.
I'm not 100%. So shame of being imperfect.
Yeah, self-doubt.
Self-doubt is another layer here. Huh? I doubt myself. Shame says, this is bad. Now, this behavior you have, or an aspect of you, may not be 100%, right? It needs work on. But the last thing it needs is our shame. Shame makes us go into hiding. Hiding creates a closing. Just like unfelt feelings create a closing. Thoughts create a closing. This is what ties all these obstacles together, right? It creates a closing so that the innermost becomes then more of a theory than a real life body sensation, right? Because this emanation from the innermost to the outermost. We want to become that inner opening, right? The permeable self that's fearless, that doesn't scrunch up when there's something painful. So we talked about shame. What's another one, guys? We said shame. What was the other word someone said?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt. Another one. It's got one word. Well, there's a few with one word. We go through it all the time.
Fear.
Who said fear? The two of you?
We said, like, bingo.
That was really cool. That was really cool. Both said fear at the same time. Great. And you know what? It is. It's one.
Yeah, fear. Yeah.
Let's just spend a few minutes here. Guys, is this cool? We're getting somewhere?
It's cool.
See, what we want to do is name what impedes us from partaking. And the more knowledge that we have, the more of an opening that creates. So let's get it even more specific here. What am I going to ask?
What are you afraid of?
Boom. Boom. Yeah. And there's many things, but guys?
Success.
Or failure.
Okay. Can you bring it a little closer to home? You see, this work is very personal. What we want to do is the trick of the mind is to be non-specific. So fear. I'm going to give you an example, okay? So fear says something bad might happen. Fear. Or something good won't happen. I'm afraid that the good won't happen. Fear, let's say another word for it, is apprehension. I'm apprehensive about an outcome. Here's something I really want, and it may not come about. Apprehension creates tension. Tension creates constriction in the body. That creates a closing. And in that closing, life can't revive us. So tension is antithetical, right? So fear, here's a great saying, fear is the great locked door. And all of us have it. All of us have a fear. And how can we actually get in touch with that fear? This is a great way to do it, guys. It's simply to identify it when it's happening in us. What's going on right now? I'm really tight inside. So where there is fear, there's tension and tightness. And all we have to do is check inside and go, what's going on right now? Am I my open, relaxed self? No. Because the good might not happen. Tight. All we want to do is bring awareness to that tightness without judgment. Acceptance, again. We're back there again. And by actually feeling it, we are identifying it rather than being totally identified with that fear. Right? So there's two steps there. You're either totally identified with emotional state or you're identifying it. And I'm observing, you know what, look what's going on right now. You're tight inside. Okay. That's creating an option in space, right? You're not totally in it. You're outside looking in. You're witnessing. You're observing. Right now I'm tight. Does tightness feel good? No. And we know that state as lovers of God, when we're in that bliss, there's no tightness. There's no contraction. And that's a really cool thing because then we can compare it. We need that comparison. Because when you're in contraction, you go, but a lot of people, they live contractedly and they have no comparison. They've got no moments of bliss. So you can really, really feel it when it's there. This is tight inside. This doesn't feel good. So what am I going to do? I'm actually going to feel the tightness. And I'll source it to something. And in my case, I'll be in a studio, not your studio, another studio, and wondering, will what I want happen today in studio? We've got this to do. It might not happen. And I check in and I'm tight. Is this my best self? No, it isn't. Yeah. I don't admonish myself. I don't judge myself. But I feel it. I'm able to source it and name where it's coming from. And you know what? Become open again.
Yeah, it seems like we're trained growing up, for me anyway, to avoid thinking about whatever stresses us out. Try to not think about it instead of breathe into it and deal with it.
Yes. Breathing into it is very, very powerful, you guys. In fact, this is just a very simple exercise when we are in that place of fear. What we do is, I'm going to feel my breath going into my body. No deep breathing, nothing weird. I'm simply going to feel my breath going in. And where does it go into? The tightness. If I feel my breath going into the body, the breath goes into the constriction. It starts to open us up. So I will use breath to dissipate that tightness and constriction that's separating me from God. So that's what I'm doing. I'm breathing. I'm feeling my breath going into my body. Simple as that. There's nothing fancy that we're doing. And whatever is tight starts to open up because you're allowing the breath to go right through it. So breath is a very, very powerful means to get untight. And we need to be untight if we are, to partake. This is all from a psychological perspective, okay? Not so much from the spiritual. We need both. You see, the work I do with people, it's all psychology. But the psychology is serving a purpose, right? It's for the spiritual. But in the system I work with, that's where I draw the line. Here, we can go full out, right? We're saying, we're doing this work in order to free spirit. That inexhaustible wealth.
Because both in Prem Ashram and in Anaya Khan's work, it's very specific that the earlier you're introduced, which we don't,
Absolutely. If our education system, if we were educated with the premise early on that there's an internal source of sustenance, there's outer fulfillment, but the most fundamental fulfillment that we can experience is right here, right now. It's not about then. It's not about your aspirations coming true. That's one kind of fulfillment, but it's not the most fundamental one. The most fundamental one doesn't have outer conditions. There's a fundamental fulfillment available right now. In fact, what's keeping you from this fundamental fulfillment is the belief that only that one can do it for me. The out there then. Hey guys, the out there then. This is what we teach. This is what we encourage. What are you going to be? What are you going to do? Right? It's all about out there then. What about in here now? As our primary source of fulfillment. Let's open up the conversation, right? Let's not have just one kind of fulfillment. I mean, that's cool, what you want to do out there. It won't sustain you. That job, that project, whatever. It's really good stuff. In fact, this is what we've come here for. But if we're totally identified in what we do, rather than, instead of asking, what do you do? How about asking, what do you open up to? And what do we open up to? The source inside. It doesn't exactly look like this.
Maybe a little.
Maybe? Thank you. It's not about what you do, but what about what we open up to. Wow. That changes the whole conversation. That means you're saying you believe in an inner source? Yeah. It's not all about out there then. There's something in here now. What are the two reasons why we don't go in? Anybody? Why don't we go in?
It's too scary to feel feelings. We're a culture that doesn't want to feel.
Beautiful, because if I go in, I might run into this unassimilated experience, right, that I've been doing lifetimes to avoid. You know, guys, this work is tough work to say yes to. It'll bring us to our knees. It'll make us really humble. I will tell you in my own life, the most curative agent for me, my path, you know, has been emotional pain. Brought me to my knees and opened up my heart.
When we expose ourselves to our vulnerabilities,
Yes.
when we show where we have reached, the limits of our strength and our courage,
Right.
the E and the M. When we're acknowledging that self-will has tied me up with the oughts and the shoulds,
Yes.
then we surrender self-will and say, I cannot do it, maybe there is a power within me that can do it, so that when I surrender self-will, I receive the capacity to participate in God's will.
Right. The self-will is a huge obstacle, isn't it, huh? We're naming all the, self-will. There's only this will get me through. Huh? And willpower, mental power. What about if I yield? So there's this saying, the willingness to yield is a vital inner movement out of which all good flows. That's the opposite of self-will.
That's right.
Did you say that again? That was great.
You bet. The willingness to yield is a vital inner movement out of which all good flows.
Or the inner source that you're talking about
Yes.
is provided a space to occupy within us, which we don't exclude out of our fear or out of our self-will, our belief that we ought to be able to do this for ourselves, but rather saying, hey, all along, what you might have realized from your mother's knee, you weren't supposed to be totally capable, but rather you were supposed to be totally incapable?
Right. This is embracing the imperfect self.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. So, you like that quote?
You.
Huh? Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it. I half made it up. Where it starts off, the willingness to yield, right? So I came up with the word the.
Awesome.
See? Thank
Do you
you.
have a copyright on it?
On the.
Yeah.
You mean the?
The. Let's do this. X. So here's self. You guys tell me this now. Thoughts? What this might represent?
Everything. Yeah, everything.
So let's see, what's this up here?
Disconnected self.
Up here? Okay, so let's say self.
Self.
Yep.
And this looks like the whole self.
Here, okay.
It's Robbie's head.
So, of course, this is all, my drawing, my symbolism. So here is again the nucleus of life. You see, here is the Evermore. And the Evermore is surrounded by the ever now. And here we are. Anyone want the love. I want the goodies. I want the, I know we don't say it that way, but here we are. What we want to do is say, could the ever now be a portal to the evermore? Could the present be the portal to the presence? It's very hard to skip, I just want, you know, God's love, and yet we're not willing to go through our immediacy. You know, in my work, it doesn't work that way. To get to the more, you have to go through the now. Now yields to those who yield to now.
Is that yours? Because that's good too.
That one's mine. And not just the whole friggin'. Now, this could be belief, right, guys? So I'm not saying this is the truth. It's been the truth for me. Many other writers, too, of the psycho-spiritual, you know. So this is my truth. It doesn't have to be yours. But I have found this to be true where I want the more. So that's my little name for God, you know, the Evermore. I want this. But right now, I've got an unassimilated now. I have an ever now. And it's at odds. Will accepting the ever now become a portal to the evermore? So one kind of acceptance leads to another. That way I'm not skipping or straining away from. There's this straining away from what is now, what we call the mood of the moment. Nah, not so good. I want a better mood of the moment. You know, that mountaintop now I had, you know, I want that mountaintop now again, you know, because it's not what I got right now. We're straining away from reality, from what exists. And this is where the problems start. But if we're willing to tolerate our now, toleration, back to the Christed heart, the open heart. I'm willing to go through a less than now, a little bit of absence. It's not a perfect now. I'm not at my top of my game, but I'm still open to it. Can that become a portal so that the evermore can fill us? So that's why I have it like this, Lynn, you know, that the now surrounds, you know, our nucleus. So if we're willing to say yes here, it becomes.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, it reminds me of some charts of Carl Jung.
Oh, is that right?
About facing, that's the self with a capital S in the middle.
Got it.
And it's, you call the ego on the outside.
Sure.
And you have to face your shadow and various other things.
Shadow, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, different terminology. Today, you know, I didn't say ego. I used outer intellect, mental powers, because it's overused. And in my work, you know, it means a lot of things to people.
Oh, sure.
So I'll say outer intellect are, you know, regular faculties of will and mental power.
Faith and belief are in the area of will. The key word is experience.
Right.
When we experience acceptance,
yes,
which is a form of love,
right,
then we realize that in fact, where that center is precisely where we are, the now that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that we are not taken out of ourselves, but rather we are more intimately engaged with ourselves.
Absolutely. Immediacy, a felt immediacy leads to vibrancy, immensity.
Life.
A felt immediacy. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here, even if it's not so great. I'm willing to endure. So that ability to tolerate is a very, very high virtue, isn't it? Huh? I can tolerate my now without straining away, shrinking away, you know, and not morbidly, right? Because this is what I deserve, like an animal that's being taken to slaughter. This is what I deserve. No. Life includes pleasure and pain, and we're open to it all. What courage. Do we fall short? Better believe it, huh? Like I said before, it can bring out the self at its worst. But by doing that, we get to see, oh, the error of our ways, then try more adaptive ways. And we have our whole life We've got a million nows, don't we? An infinite amount of nows to work with. You know? And having a fellowship like this is very strengthening. Guys, I don't have this in my life, okay? I miss it. I don't do this. And it's really strengthening for me to be with like-minded people. You know, we talk the same language. And I'm very appreciative of being here. And that I was allowed to do this, you know, with you guys together. It's strengthening, huh? This is how we can help each other and strengthen ourselves, because it's quite a task, isn't it? You know, because we can fall off. You know the two biggest reasons people go into therapy? Two biggest presenting concerns, anybody? The real big.
Loneliness?
Loneliness, okay, then that would be a symptom of, if I'm lonely, then I'm...
Lack of relationship.
Right. But like a presenting concern...
And not being heard, maybe? People just want someone to listen.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But like the disorder.
Depression.
Depression, yeah. So depression actually and anxiety. Anxiety says something bad is going to happen. Depression says something bad
Has already happened.
is happening and it'll never get better. Huh? There's no way out. And people cling to that conviction. You know, this is, you know, society is doing me in and the wrongs out there, but really, the real obstructions are within the self. You know, it's so easy to blame out there, right? The real obstructions to fulfillment, sure, there's some legitimate ones, right? But the big ones, right in here. And when we want to take self-responsibility and say, I want to take myself on. So another one of the pieces, guys, is what we call character defects, right? We were looking at obstructions before, right? We looked at, pride. Did we mention pride? No. What does pride say?
Better than this.
Pardon?
Too good for this.
Too good for this.
Yeah, how about pride is a pretense? I'm actually going to pretend to be more than I actually am. You know, and spiritual people were really good at that. True?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, when we had anger on before, I know this, you know, because I first heard about Baba when I was 17, and then 10 years later, I did some depth psychology work where they're asked you to express your anger. And I was spiritual. I don't get angry. That being angry is way beneath, you know. No. I really felt that, you know. And yet, I was encouraged and didn't realize how angry I was. And the anger came out in a way that was safe. Nobody got hurt, you know, and it released it. And I was able to go deeper into unfelt pain. These are all the, you know, the pieces inside, right? The self is here. We have anger, unfelt pain. But this is just a passage. Underneath that, there's the vitality, the aliveness. So, Gary, when I work with people, I may not bring up God, but I'll say your energy and vitality and your wherewithal is all under those layers. So keep willing to feel. We have a real premium in our society about thinking, but not developing our feeling capacity. And I really believe that God lives within the felt experience, right? We need to open. No real change can ever occur unless you open your heart. No real change can ever occur unless we open our heart. And by opening our heart, we're opening it's going to hurt sometimes. It's going to suck. And imagine being able to tell another human being that, you know, I'm hurting right now. And that other person is right there for you. What a gift. What a healing gift. You see my tears, and Max, I'm overcoming the shame of my tears. I don't know about you guys, huh? But us guys, it's tough to cry. You know, and yet it's real. And yet I'm going to stuff them, you know. It's like, but I feel comfortable enough with another man that I can shed, and you're not going to make fun of me, basically. That's healing. And that's what we need to give to each other. Huh? That ability to be real with each other and give each other that place, that space to drop into those deep areas where another person can witness with complete acceptance and actually compassion and love. What a gift. And oftentimes we don't drop to those deeper levels, right? It's very easy to stay abstract, you know? But we do that and a cleansing occurs. We wipe the slate clean of that day that's a crummy day when you tell someone else the truth, right? It kind of wipes it. I've just told you, and you're accepting. You're mirroring for me what I need to do here. I need to accept. And you're accepting, and it wipes the slate clean of that mood of the moment. So pride, you guys, gets in the way of all that, right? I'm not going to tell you I'm broken today. I'm doing okay. So pride is a real obstacle because it's a lie. It's not the truth. So we need to stop pretending to be more than we actually are. And what a gift to give each other.
I feel like with young people, it's worse than ever. There's this Facebook syndrome that I see, you know?
Yep.
Where everyone's sort of projecting the best of themselves, and like an embarrassing thing that happens is a destructive.
Right.
They just cannot bear to have anything embarrassing happen in their lives. They just, it's more debilitating than we even imagine. I mean, kids nowadays are so.
Right. There's no room for the imperfect self, right? Because we'll get our daggers out. All right, if I let out my less than self, something embarrassing, right? You're going to judge me. I once had this, wintertime. The cutest girl in the school goes outside, it's 20 below, freezing. She walks outside with her little jogging shorts on. Hi, everybody. 20 below. I mean, what was that about, right? You know, everyone's waiting for the bus and she's there, you know. Next morning, 5 girls appear at my office, right? I'm there on computer. I look up, yes, good morning. They all figuratively had daggers in their hands. Did you see what she did yesterday? They wanted to kill her because they called her an attention whore. Huh? Okay, yes, she wanted the love, but look at you guys. I saw it too. You know, I saw what you saw. She went for the cheap hit, you know. Hey, everybody. But look at you. You want to kill her. It's something for you to look at, you know. So tolerance of the imperfect self. Yes, she wants attention. She wants love. Don't you? Huh? Don't we all? So she went about it in a way that's a little out there, you know. But really, what's the root here that connects us? We want love. She just did this. Right? The whole main thing is let's look at the behavior and bring it back to its, you know, fundamental root, you know. It's not a bad person. She just wanted love. I wanted love. We all want love, right? But if we connect with the internal source of love, that is the cure for neediness. Would you agree? You're no longer needy and wanting and grasping when you're filled from the inside. Now, to get to that place of non-neediness, we want to become, you know, a receptacle. Now, to become a receptacle, then we need to be receptive to the moment. To be receptive to the moment means we need to say yes to pain. So pain actually leads to power. Not morbidly, right? But if we want to become not needy, we want to be infilled. Well, part of getting infilled means saying yes to the moment. And sometimes the moment hurts. True? We want a better relationship with emotional pain, basically. We don't teach that, but I think that's our next step in our evolution. Otherwise, we feel impoverished. We get greedy. We get very aggressive. I really believe that the source of violence has a lot to do with the unwillingness to feel emotional pain. Would you guys agree? It ain't video games. It's not Black Sabbath. It's the unwillingness, like that boy I had, right? Who didn't want to feel the pain of rejection. And now that he has, his violent streak is gone. That's a whole different conversation. So yes, the power of a group to teach what's really relevant. We know our math We know our geography and spelling. Those are building blocks, right? But what about this other piece that you're talking about, you know? That only in relationship to other human beings that issues still existing within the self get triggered. On our own, we're cool. Somebody says something or does something, throws us right off, right? And what's the truth there? We have such a hard time saying we felt hurt, don't we? When something happens, I'll just brush it off. Rather than telling you, you know, Cliff,
Yeah.
I felt hurt, and I didn't want to tell you. You know,
What did you do?
What did you do?
This is hypothetical. This is hypothetical. So, yeah, right. Phew.
He came in late. That's what.
Oh, right. That's right.
Did that hurt you?
Yeah. Oh, did it ever? Now, talk about being thin-skinned, right? I just want to say I am thrilled that you guys showed up,
Yeah.
you know, and that we can have this exchange together that keeps it relevant and alive, you know, human beings just getting together, wanting to become better human beings. But by working with, you know, our immediacy, nothing lofty and weird, you know, that's why I called it a grounded approach to spirituality, you know, working with the here and now, and always with compassion to our broken, less than selves.
Right?
We love you.
Right.
His favorite word. Thank you, everybody.